All right, we're back on the 74. Got my cam yesterday. I'll do a video before I go putting all these parts in. I'll lay everything out. Kind of go over what I'm doing. But anyhow, it's just like I expected. This motor's original. It's got 882 heads on it. The intake had never been off of it. Got it up. It had the factory gasket on it. Never been off. A lot of the problems with these timing chains is you see in here the gear, that top part of it is some sort of like a carbon fiber, or just, let's just call it plastic, junk. One of GM's biggest problems back in the day was using these parts. If they would have made complete steel gear like it's going back on this, and I'm going to do a double roller, they're a little bit harder to get lined up on there and stuff. Get the chain situated onto it. It's not as easy as just slapping the, really on this, a lot of people done this back in the day when they would do these timing chains at the garage. They would pull these things in and do them the same day, and they'd be returned to the customer as long as you didn't want a cam put in it. If you wanted a cam put in it, it obviously got into a little bit more, but they would leave the bottom gear and just replace the top and the chain instead of popping that off and popping a new one back on. And it's because the bottom gear is steel. They don't wear out a whole lot. But if you're going to do it right. I don't like half-assing anything, but I know this happened for a fact. When I was a kid, I worked at a full-service gas station, and they had a mechanic working there, and he'd done these all the time, and that's what he would do, is just slap a chain on it. But as you can see, it's getting pretty loose. And a lot of that's because of the wear on this, and then over time, this truck's set for like 25 years or something. All this oil dries out of this chain, and it's nothing in there. Fire them up, takes it a while to really get the oil back around this, but it wears here. This chain probably isn't stretched or anything like that. It's probably just these teeth wearing off. It's not broke or anything, but it's not something you want to risk. If I would have got out and thrown a 4-barrel and an intake on this truck, which it's got the 882 heads on it, so that means it could have the 2-barrel or the 4-barrel. So back in this year, these motors were kind of put on the shelf, heads and everything, and then whenever they got put in the cars, when they decided what it was going to be. So checked all the numbers on it. I think I wrote that in another video. It is a numbers matching engine trans. Everything matches up. So really happy about that. Truck's only showing 13,000 miles, but who knows? Some would say, well, at 13,000 that gear wouldn't have wore out, but probably wasn't when we first got it running. It's probably tight, but this conventional oil these days, it's not what it used to be. You have a lot more detergents in oil, and then a lot of people try to run 10W40 in these motors in the wintertime. I like to go ahead and change it out to 1030. And I'll be honest with you, once I get done with this motor, it's probably just going to get 1030 put in it year round. Really all you got to do on that is watch your temperature. But I don't like 1040 on a cold start. It just seems like, it just takes it a minute to build oil pressure. It's 10W30 is probably fine. If you notice your modern day vehicles, they all run thinner oil, but your oil galleys in these motors are a certain size. So if you take a newer style engine and you go dumping 10W40 in it, you're going to ruin it. I mean, there's no doubt about it, because the returns for the oil's a lot smaller. But yeah, I just want to kind of do a quick update here. I'm going to try to keep this under 6 minutes and just let you know I am on this timing cover. Everybody says you got to take the oil pan off to do these. You don't. I will say this, I have had a couple of these leak after putting them back together. But what we do here is right there when I pulled it out, I loosened the first 2 bolts up in the oil pan. But I seen another video where a guy drove a screwdriver up in there. It's going to leak now, that he done that. That'll leak, I guarantee it. So I'm not going to I didn't do nothing like that. I loosened the first 2 up on the driver's side of the engine, the left side. And then I loosened just the first one up on this side. That's all I done to this one. Kind of shove down, pull out at the same time. A lot of people bend these pans doing that. Don't really look like I bent it. and you would be able to tell if you did. There'd be a crinkle in the paint or a crinkle in the metal. So it'll be fine, but I'm going to put a new seal in it, clean it up a little bit. But you see right here where it bent that little ear out right there? It's another sign showing me that this motor's not been apart. But what you're going to do on this is you're just going to take and notch this down to here and just cut a little corner off of this like that on each side. So I'm going to notch it like that, just the part it bent out. So once you notch that, you're not fighting this sharp edge. You're going to get you a new seal to go around here. Get it up in there, thin coat of RTV on that, something high temperature, high vibration. I like this stuff myself. It's new Optimum Max torque, and it's a really high temperature stuff. So what I'll do with that is, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, is I'll get down in there once I get these gears and stuff off. It's important while you got all this off to go ahead and clean that belt on the front of that oil pan, that lip. Clean that really good. Even if you know you don't want to get a bunch of crap back in your motor. So watch that, because that's direct into the oil pan right there. But I'm just going to take one of these microfiber towels. I'm going to soak it down in brake cleaner, and I'm going to clean that up real good, because I want all that oil off of that. I want it to dry out, air off, and get back to bare metal. If you're going to let it set for a couple days, just take some 10W40 or some PB and kind of just line it so it don't flash rust on you. Same as up here. If I don't go back together with the intake today, I'll just take some PB or something or some oil, and I'll just run all over all this a little bit, not dumping it down around your valves and stuff, but just to get a little thin coat on there to keep it from getting some overnight rust on there. And then you cover that back up. And guy had a hard time cleaning that up. I mean, I was in there for 45 minutes. Those factory gaskets, they really stuck. But the reason why they tell you to put the Permatex around here, it obviously helps your gasket stay in place while you're setting everything. But as you can see some minor pitting there. And, you know, really this engine had that when it was put in. You know, you're just trying to fill those voids. And also, a lot of people don't know is that in these gaskets, they have like a little thin strip of their own stuff in them that's kind of built into it. And that just helps activate that and helps adhere it. Now, I got a buddy, and what he uses every time before he does this, he'll clean this up really good, and he'll take some adhesive promoter, and he'll actually run adhesive promoter around the metal, just around the areas that's got to seal off, you know, your valve ports and water jackets and stuff. And then he puts his Permatex on, and that really makes it get sticky fast, and it activates it. You know, I don't think it says on Permatex that you have to use that, but it kind of helps. I like adhesive promoter, and it helps remove some grease and stuff. I am not going to get that carried away. I'll clean it real good with brake clean and wish it well. But yeah, again, another thing, I had a guy that was trying to change one time, and he didn't drop the fuel pump out. So, you know, the fuel pump shaft runs up, and it runs off the cam. So when the cam's turning, I should be doing it this way, but when the cam's turning, it's shoving that shaft up and down. So a guy don't want to be leaving the fuel pump up there trying to yank this cam out. You right? You follow me? So, you know, don't cut no corners. Pay attention. You know, these old small blocks, man, they got a steel oil pan on them. That's why I don't never change that. You know, they're fine oil pans. But I'm going to clean that up, and when I go back together, I'll get my rope seal in there. But it's kind of nice to leave that dry if you can, down through there. That seal will seal on its own, you know, but it don't hurt. What I'll do to this one is I'll get down in there and I'll put a dab of RTV in this corner right here. Once everything's cleaned up good, it'll get RTV in this corner, it'll get RTV in that corner. Good little blunt chunk of it up in there. Once it's cleaned out, you can try to smear some up in the oil pan a little bit, get some brake clean in there, try to clean up that little bit of that oil pan gasket you can see to help that RTV stick to it. And I'm going to put a little dab up in there, a little dab up in there, and I'm just going to take my finger and put some just right around the bell right around the top of the bevel on that oil pan. Not crazy and smearing it all over the place. I see them like that all the time. Looks like hell. Don't really matter what it looks like. I just see it leaking through it. So I just want, you know, I don't want to put a big old bunch of silicone on there. Just a thin layer. And then that's when you're ready to go back together with it. You want that stuff to be sticky. Maybe let it set 5-10 minutes, tack up depending on what the temperature is outside, and then just stick it back together, get in there, shove down on it. They can be a bear, but once you get it in there, you don't want to damage this seal that goes in here. Now, I have seen guys knock these seals out, put the pan back on it so the seal's not in the way, and then knock the seal into the pan. So I'm going to put my seal in before I put the pan on there because I'll be able to get it down far enough. But I've seen people do that. I never really understood why, but I've seen them do it. They'll just knock that out, clean it up real good, and it gets this part of the seal out of your way. You can see when I went back together with it or come out with it what the crank did to that seal. So you don't want to do that to your new one putting it in. So if you want to leave that out to the side, get your pan back on. But then you're going to have something large enough that fits your seal perfectly that'll slide over your crank to be able to drive that seal in there. You're not going to be able to get in there with a hammer and beat it around it. You'll have that thing beat all out of whack. I'm going to put this in on a flat surface. So let's just say right here, I'm going to put this like right here on a flat surface, slide it all the way up against that because you got this lip right here. I'm going to slide it all the way up against that. Make sure it's held down good. Get somebody to hold it for you, whatever you got to do. Get this cleaned up real good. Put a thin coat of silicone around through there, just very thin, because keep in mind your outer ring of your seal has that, you know, it's like a paint, but it actually is like a sealer once it gets heated up. But thin layer of RTV, drive that seal in there, you'll be good to go. You don't have to use RTV around there if you don't want. A lot of people don't. The seal kind of crushes like an axle seal, you know, like on the back of your rotors and stuff. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and work on getting the cam out of it. I got to loosen up all my my rocker arms, pull my push rods out, and then you know, once you're done, get your cam in, get your new lifters dropped down in. You go through and you adjust those things a million times back and forth, rotating the motor around. A lot of people want to try to half-ass this stuff back together, start the engine up, try to do it while it's running. Come on, man. Get the book out. You know, the difference between a 30 thousandths valve lash and a 60 thousandths valve lash is pretty good. So, you know, I don't know if I'm calling it right by saying lash. I am no expert, so you guys can laugh at me all you want, but I've worked on cars my whole life. I could pull this motor out probably and done this work to it quicker than I can in it, but obviously you're losing tranny fluid when you do that and stuff, so I just figured I'd do it in it. This started out to be an intake job and it evolved. Blame that on OCDs, but I'm glad I did it now. I went one size up on the cam. It's the only thing you can do on these without changing your valve springs. I see a lot of people going out and getting a big voodoo cam, sticking in these things, not realizing those valve springs got to be changed once you do that. So, you know, about all you can do without any head modification is one size up. I think they make some RV cams that you can play around with. I didn't do that on this one. I think this is going to be a 425 lift, not much, you know, but I'm hoping it gives it a better sound. I like the way the truck sounds, but I'm hoping it gives it a better sound. So, but anyway, sorry about the cold here. I got a little bit of allergies or something going on. But yeah, that's that. And then, you know, for the sake of whatever, if that oil pan leaks, guess what? Guess what? I just get under it and put an oil pan gasket on it. If you can do all this, you can change your oil pan gasket. So don't sweat it. You know, I remember the first time I done this, I was about 11 or 12. I had an old gray 77 truck, 350. Man, somebody'd been dumping Valvoline in that truck. You know, they'd been dumping Valvoline in it since Moby Dick was a minnow. And you pull those valve covers off of there, and we had to take a potato spoon and spoons and dig the sludge out of it. It was an old junker truck, been beat to death, nobody took care of it. That was the first one I did, and I remember when I was going back together with it, I was just worried, you know, if it leaks, fix it, you know, jump in it, don't worry about it. But I like to give, in each video, I like to do a little bit of an overview on this truck. It's a 74. I'm the second owner of it. My dad found this truck. It comes from Virginia, but he found it in North Carolina. That way, if any of the family members of the original owner of it sees it, want to know where it's at, and that it's got a good home, it does. I do not have it at the shop right now. It's at my house. Had some skin cancer removed, so it's giving me something to do. I like it how everybody's videos block their tag numbers off and stuff. You know, I see your tag number at a red light. What's the difference in seeing it in the video? And anybody wants to come around here starting anything, well, that would be a good idea. I went with the Cooper Cobra Radial GTs, a 255, 60-15. I like it. You can go up to like a 275 on these without them rubbing, I think. But I didn't want to risk it up there in the front thinger. But I like them to drive pretty original. I don't like messing with speedometers and stuff and changing that. But the back end's going to come down. As you can see, this one has the heavy duty springs in it. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Really bangs on a guy's head a lot. But if you go out and you find one of these trucks that's got the factory 6-cylinder in it, you're only going to find about 4 underneath there, depending on the truck. 4 or 5 or something like that. I don't know the count to be sure. But that's going to get some modifications. I'm going to do something with the springs, make it a little softer. And I am going to drop the back down at least 2 inches. I don't like messing with the front on these trucks a lot. But I like them to set just a little bit, you know, not level, just a little down in the rear end. And what that'll do for a guy is once he gets his rear end turned into a positive traction rear end, when he's launching it, when you're getting on it, the truck's really going to jump down and try to get a little more traction for you. But other than that, if you're going to try to run this truck, you got to put some weight in the bed of it, or do a bunch of linking up crap, and you know. But I'm not into all that. It ain't getting raced. It might take me 10 years, but I'm going to restore this truck completely. And I'll keep the progress up here. I don't have no fancy YouTube page. I don't have no video editors. I try to get my daughter involved in it and get her interested. She don't seem very interested, but I'm still working on that. But we're getting a better camera, so it's coming. I'm waiting to get it, learn how to use it. Probably take me a month. Once I do, I'll be able to set that up on a tripod and get a little bit more detailed about going together with this stuff. I work on this stuff all the time, so there'll be a lot of videos out there, I guess. But I try to go over everything I can that I've run into that was a question. You know, when you start rolling this motor over a lot, yank the plugs out of it. It makes it a lot easier. Just get them out. But I wouldn't suggest leaving them out overnight. You know, where we live at down here, we have a lot of humidity, a lot of condensation stuff. So that moisture gets up in your cylinders. So I recommend at the end of each day, when you're done with your work, if you're not going to complete it, just screw the spark plugs back in it most of the way. Help anything from getting up in there, or mud dauber getting up in there and messing with a guy. But other than that, we're going to make sure this thing's lined up perfect. I did have a bad harmonic balancer, so I got that part here. It's only $45 at Napa. And these come with the new keyway. See it in there? Because sometimes when you're pulling that off of there, that old one will fall out. But that one hasn't. So probably leave that alone. But yeah. So with this thing was up on top dead center, the timing mark was pointing clear at the ground. And what had happened is that balancer had went clear out. The rubber started slipping, so the balancer started leaving, you know, the ring, whatever you want to call it. So what I want to do right now is make sure that I get this. It don't matter back there. Just remember, that's your cam. That's the only thing you're matching up back there is the back of that cam. There's nothing else in there it connects to except for your oil pump shaft. But I want to make sure I get this lined up before I go any further. And then I'll pop that off. And then, you know, if you want to use a little impact to try to get it off there without spinning everything on you, or just slide that on there and have somebody hold on to it for a second. But it don't much matter. You know, the crank has got a keyway on it. You can only put the gear on one way. There's a beveled edge on the back of it that goes toward the motor. And then on your cam, that pulley only goes on there one way. So the only way to mess this up really would be to get a cylinder down halfway or something. So number one up, you're not going to change that unless you move the crank. So if you took all this off there and then turned the crank under, well, when you put your gear back on it anyway, to line your dots up, you're going to have to turn the crank back around. So it's not like it's the end of the world. But you could get up on number one, not on a compression stroke. So if you're not on a compression stroke, you're 180 out, I think is what they call it. I'm not a professional again. So you don't want to do that. Don't do a whole lot messing around rotating your motor over while that's apart. But if you're up on compression, your intake valve will be open. Be up. So you can look all that stuff up. It's in the books. It's online. Easy to find. I like to run a fuel filter before the fuel pump. That keeps the crud from getting in the fuel pump. I don't like fuel filters laying up here on top of the motor. And that's fine. There's not a whole lot. A lot of guys say, well, what if something comes out of the fuel pump and gets up in the carburetor? Well, you know, can't worry about all that. But fuel filter before the fuel pump, down here out of the way, not up on the motor. All right, until next time, we'll see you later.